I would just say whatever whatever volume you're usually play it at.
That'll wake you up. Good morning, everyone. So it is said that there are two kinds of people at South Church. Those who love organ music and those who do not. Whatever your personal feelings are about it, organ music has been a cherished part of South Church worship services since the day we first opened the doors of this sanctuary. As construction began back in 1824, the congregation also negotiated to purchase an organ at the significant cost of $1,000. Incidentally, the Universalist congregation down the road invested in organs for their sanctuary in the mid-1800s as well. There is record of them installing an organ costing more than $3,000. Said to be one of the best in the States, but I think we still got a better deal. Now, during construction of this granite church, the community decided that there were going to be no galleries. Instead, the balcony, which is what they were meant to be the home for the organ. But then, in 1858, only 32 years after the church opened its doors, William Sheaf, a prominent businessman, proposed to extend the South Church by adding a 15-foot extension to the back, approximately through the chancel into where the back staircase is. And they rebuilt the pews, added a lot of decorative flourish to the space, and changed the position of the organ during that project. Now, rising costs of maintaining the organ were always an issue at the end of the 19th century because it wasn't really an item in the budget. The repair of the organ was often what was left in the budget, if anything, and that was at the discretion of the wardens. Now, in the 1880s, there were many complaints, though, because the church cut back from a paid choir to a volunteer choir. Now, the problem was not quantity of volunteers. The annual minutes actually note, but the quality of their singing? Exacerbating the problem, of course, the organ was out of tune because the pipes were dirty and crooked. The members told the board enough was enough, no more terrible music. Then come April of 1953, we purchased a new organ, costing about $6,000 that had previously been in, of all places, the National Cathedral. They held a rededication ceremony in January of 1954. Organ repair became part of the restoration in 1986, and a maintenance fund was finally established, maybe around the same time, which has supported the organ's ongoing upkeep, allowing us to enjoy this incredible instrument today, which Susan Adams is going to kick off for us. Thank you.
There's something going on with this microphone. I wonder if it's feedback. Yeah. Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Kirsten Hunter. I am the Director of Lifespan Ministries here at South Church, serving in co-leadership with Reverend Ellen Quadgrass and serving in shared ministry with all of you. Welcome to those who are joining us online and here in person. We're so glad that you are here on this auspicious day, for today is the 200th anniversary of the very first worship service in this building. It is a sacred and special occasion in a sacred and special place, and I hope you don't have a lot planned because it's going to take some time to share everything that's happened within the walls of this church over the past 200 years. So we're going to be here for a while. No, I promise I'm going to do my best to keep us to an hour as usual. As part of that effort, I'm actually going to cut the candle lighting from today's service because the ministers of years past have possessed my body with lots of words. So forgive that shift in our plans. That said, today will just be a beginning, and we will have a whole year to tell stories of this place, to celebrate this 200th anniversary, with all kinds of different events and all kinds of different ways to look back, to look at now, and to look into the future. After service today, I invite every single one of you to come downstairs. There is a gigantic and incredibly delicious looking cake donated from the Beach Pea Bakery because Mariah is so good to us. And I would love to share that cake and coffee with you. I'm also hoping you will come down to answer a question. I have pieces of paper down there, and I'm looking to hear from each of you to tell the South Church congregation of 100 years from now anything you want them to know about South Church right now. You can sign your name on that paper or leave it anonymous, but be aware that there is a good chance that someone from that congregation will go looking for the archive from today, because in preparation of today, I looked at 100 years ago and 100 years before that. And so, when they find that archive, they will not just find the message that we offer you today, but they will find any of the words you offer to include as well. And I hope that you will be a part of carrying forward a legacy that is a tradition now for more than 2 centuries. Today we are going to be talking about the resilience that comes from being a community who is willing to be changed as we grow in understanding. We will tell stories throughout this service about a church that has sheltered us for over 200 years, becoming who we are today, and which will shelter us, God willing, for 200, 400 more. As we look into the future and live into a future we cannot predict, but we can certainly imagine. So take a deep breath, settle into the pews that are holding you and have held so many in care long before you sat there. I encourage you, while we're here together, to look at your order of service. There are some details about today's service and some wonderful announcements to check out. Leading worship with me today is Worship Associate Willow Young, and longtime South Church member Janet Pulaski, who will be offering opening words. Janet has been working on a book about South Church that is going to be published in September. She has been a font of knowledge as we've been exploring this service and is working with us on future celebratory 200th anniversary events for the coming year. Reverend Ellen will be offering our Time for All Ages today. Susan Adams will be playing the organ. Jen Leiden will be offering vocals. Ben Abbott is helping us with tech and video, and many, many thanks to that whole team and our staff team and volunteers who will also be holding children downstairs for religious education. There is a nursery open Throughout this service, downstairs for children under 3, we have assisted listening devices and large print hymnals in the back of the church. You can talk to an usher if you need one. And I ask for you to take a moment to silence your cell phones now. By way of announcements, I just have one. And it was inspired from a conversation I shared with the Fellowship Associates this week as they met for their monthly meeting and talked about how can we get more people to chip in for social hour, for greeting, for ushers, and for RE. These are programs that, if we all contribute to, are really easy, and they are something that make our community thrive. And I said, well, heck, I can make an announcement and ask. So if you are sitting here and you are not either on the greeter team or on the kitchen team or an RE volunteer or an usher, please consider becoming one of those people. If we all are on those teams, we probably only have to show up once a month to the task at hand to make our community a beautifully welcoming place and to not put too much of a workload on like 4 volunteers who show up every single week and do those jobs. So thank you for that. And Ann Deminoff, I believe you have a message to offer, along with Alice O'Trainer.
Good morning. I'm Ann Deminoff.
And I'm Alice O'Trainer.
Alice and I are co-conveners of South Church Shared Ministry Associates. We support our 5 associate programs and help you find ways to participate in our ministry here at South Church. You may also recognize us from the welcome desk downstairs, where we answer questions about South Church, sign folks up for the newsletter, and best of all, connect members and friends to one another to deepen their experience here at church. In the last few weeks, we've been delighted to make connections such as introducing a new member to the organizer of a midweek breakfast group and putting in touch 2 young mothers who live near one another. Over the next few weeks, you'll hear testimonials from each of the 5 associate groups at South Church: fellowship, learning, pastoral, social justice, and worship associates. These 5 groups represent the core function of South Church ministry. We urge you to listen carefully to these testimonials to discern where you might best utilize your talents to support our church community in the coming year. Right now, we're going to take a few moments to tell you about each of the associate programs.
Why do you come to South Church? Besides looking for a spiritual home, are you coming to gain a sense of community, a place where you can celebrate the good times as well as the difficult times of life? Our fellowship associates are dedicated to building that community. They staff coffee hour, organize circle suppers, conduct the Journey to Membership classes, and many other things. If you are someone who believes in warmly welcoming all of the new people who are coming into our church at this time, and that community is more important now than ever, perhaps the Fellowship Associates is for you. It's one group that both longtime members and brand new members can join because they have a wide breadth of activities.
Do you enjoy writing, researching, or teaching? The Learning Associates prepare lessons for our covenant groups, small group discussion groups that take a deep dive into spiritual and moral issues. This team also supports our Director of Lifespan Ministry in creating opportunities for adult learning here at South Church. If you're a writer or theme-based thinker, Learning Associates might be for you.
Are you someone who's compassionate and really loves helping others? The Pastoral Associates are the beating heart of this community. They provide support in times of need by sending cards, organizing meals, rides, pet care, presenting prayer shawls, and supporting celebrations of life. One of the sweetest things they do. With so many of us feeling stressed at this time and sometimes overwhelmed, this team is there to wrap its arms around us. Pastoral associates coordinate with our wider network of care to deliver these services. Over 200 generous people who offer their time. So if you're someone for whom this gives you a tug, think about the pastoral associate team.
If you're particularly concerned about local, national, and international issues, as we all are, the Social Justice Associates may be for you. Social Justice Associates organize social action to act on our faith in the larger community. In today's troubled times, this group needs more support than ever. If you want to help plan collective social action, please listen carefully to the Social Justice Associates testimonial on March 15th. This team needs seasoned members from our community as well as new members who can take a leadership role in organizing our social justice work. There is a lot to do.
Do you enjoy writing and telling stories? Would you enjoy participating in Sunday worship? Our worship associate team is looking for a couple of new members for the coming year. Listen well to their testimonial on March 22nd if you really love to write and are willing to share your stories with all of us.
We also welcome new members to our group, Shared Ministry, the umbrella group that matches members' interests, talents, and passions to associate groups and volunteer opportunities and keeps the welcome desk staffed. Consider joining Shared Ministry if you like to help members find their best points of connection and engagement here at South Church. For the past few months, we've had conversations with many of you, getting to know you and learning what you're looking for, so we can suggest the best opportunities for service here at church. Perhaps it's joining one of the associate programs, or maybe you prefer to join the knitting ministry, the kitchen ministry, the pocket garden team, or one of the other 40 groups here at South Church. We'd like to brainstorm with you to find your best entry point, especially if you're new to South Church.
We'll be downstairs immediately after the service and would love to chat with you, and we have some materials there for you to take. So after you get your delicious piece of cake, come on over and see what we have. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
If you were taking notes, you might have had some ideas to put down on that paper of notes to 100 years from now of what is South Church all about. Thank you, Shared Ministry team. Each Sunday we offer a land acknowledgement. And this Sunday I'm going to preface it with just a tiny bit of history. From the year 1623, when the first English settlers arrived to this area, and then about 13 years later, in 1636, the ministers of South Church traced the roots of our congregation back to a chapel and parsonage built in that year, in what would become known as the center of Portsmouth. But the area had known indigenous footprints for thousands of years prior to the arrival of those English settlers and the building of the first congregation that connects us to that time. Like the Pawtucket, Pennacook, and Abenaki peoples, the English who first came here came to fish and to hunt. And as Janet described in a draft of her book that I've had the opportunity to preview, it was not a simple, straightforward case of stolen territories, though that is often how it is referenced in land acknowledgments throughout this region today, including here at South Church. In fact, the Pawtucket and Pennacook people seem to have met newly arrived English settlers in this area with some trust and an interest in establishing a mutually beneficial community relationship. They anticipated sharing these hunting and fishing lands. However, after initial agreements for land sharing were made, early settlers did not reciprocate. The native population's interest in sharing was not one that they had themselves, and within 50 years of arrival, as was the case so often during the colonization of North America, promises to coexist were broken, properties were walled off, and indigenous people were driven out of the area, or worse. The original peoples here are said to have been displaced from the customary uses of this land through the disputed region, not by sword, but by pen. However, there was also documented murder and enslavement during that first century, as well as at least one incident of retaliation on the part of the local tribes. Ultimately, and consistent with so many other stories of indigenous land claims being denied by the U.S. government, Europeans arrived in this area with a belief in their inalienable rights to these lands, based on the doctrine of discovery, a 14th century decree made in Europe that justified European colonization and enshrined white Christian supremacy for an ensuing 6 centuries. May we hold this part of our legacy with humility. May we recognize that supremacy continues to compel oppression and violence in systems we are witness to today. Those harms were not only back then, they echo in the systems we live in right up until now, and they ask something of us. They ask for truth-telling. They ask for learning, for repair, and for the support of indigenous people seeking self-determination. May we hold that responsibility personally as well as collectively, now and in the years to come. Amen.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heart's own song.
Our chalice lighting words this morning were written by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper in 1866, one of the first and most successful African-American authors in the United States during the 19th century, an active abolitionist, feminist, and conductor of the Underground Railroad. She held dual membership in Unitarian and African Methodist Episcopal churches in Philadelphia and believed the struggles for Black Americans and women of all races were connected. These are her words. "We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul." I invite everyone to stand as you're willing and able and join us in the recitation of our mission statement. At South Church, we nourish spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. Thank you. You may be seated.
Yep, great, thanks. And I'm not going to try to get up the stairs. I got ambushed by a large dog on an icy sidewalk this week, so. 200 years ago this morning, Reverend Nathan Parker opened the doors of South Church, or the Stone Church, as it was known then to worshipers. His first question, for ministers at South Church have always been questioners. He wrote, "For what purposes has this house been erected, and what hopes may we rationally associate with this consecrated place? So why did our intrepid ancestors build this church of Rockport granite with its slate roof and square bell tower, described at the time as, quote, one of the most beautiful and impressive temples of the land? Just a few years earlier, at their annual meeting, yes, they had annual meetings back then, and yes, I've read them all, parishioners and their minister had worried about, quote, the total indifference of churchgoers to the demands of Christian duty. You can guess what they meant. Sharing the financial burdens of the church. Although new members had joined, they realized on looking back that it was only in years of earthquakes. There were still only 124 tax-paying members when they built the church. It was not a particularly auspicious time for undertaking the construction of a monumental meeting house. And yet, they did. Against all odds, they built a massive stone church in the center of Portsmouth. Schooners and sloops sailed into the harbor weekly, loaded down with granite. A glass chandelier arrived from Cambridge. The bell, made by Paul Revere's son, was hung in the square tower. The clear arched windows let light into the open space, unobstructed by side galleries. The columns of the front portico, evoking classical antiquity, faced outward to the city, a sign of civic engagement. The iron fence arrived by ship from England. The women of the church raised funds to purchase the organ that we've heard, an ancestor of that organ, a rarity in churches of the time. So Nathan Parker did give us his answer to the question of why build. The granite church represented our ancestors' dreams for the future. He preached, "We hope that this temple will give its shelter to those who will teach good principles and to those who will cherish them, to those who will inculcate the benevolent spirit of the gospel, and to those who will delight in the exercise of kind affections." In this opening sermon 200 years ago today, Nathan Parker called on his congregation to seek truth, quote, in the light of open day. Rather than cling to the creeds of old, he challenged them to draw inspiration from, quote, the ever-growing mass of human knowledge, meaning science. But in language that is not our own, he dedicated, quote, this house to truth, to the King of truth, and to the God of truth. This spirit of inquiry and search for meaning in the world around us is, however, very much our own. Rather than looking back over the almost 200 years since the building of the first church, Nathan Parker called upon the congregation to direct, quote, its thoughts to the future. This house is built for perpetuity, he proclaimed. Its elements are as indestructible as the earth on which it rests. This house will stand and worshipers will collect around this altar in future years, though we desert it. We are those worshipers, even as we celebrate our bold ancestors and all that they built. We dare to dream of the future. Over the first century, South Church grew into its new granite church building. South Church perpetually required repairs, especially the boiler, and that could have a history of its own. Not that anyone would read it, but just ask Peter Okeisen. All the while, congregations redesigned, replastered, and replaced. In 1926, 100 years later, Reverend Alfred Gooding began the centenary address by remembering the history of South Church. He took the worshipers back to the first meeting house built by English settlers that Kirsten discussed in 1636, on land that we now acknowledge had been hunted and fished by the Pennacook and Abenaki people for thousands of years. As Alfred Gooding traced our religious ancestors through their succession of wooden meeting houses, he also did not mention the, quote, Negro servants who signed the first covenant of South Church on April 9th, 1717. Very unusual. They included Joseph and Nancy and their children James and Eleazar, enslaved by William Cotton. 1 month later, Tony, the, quote, Negro servant to Colonel Hunking, joined the church. Dinah, Caesar, Phyllis, and Jupiter Walker followed, and their children were baptized in the church. The minister, John Emerson, also owned slaves. They did not join the church. There is a story hiding there. Now, I don't want to discredit Alfred Gooding for not posing questions that we would ask today. He would have made an outstanding historian if he hadn't been distracted by the ministry. In closing his address in 1926, Reverend Alfred Gooding expressed his confidence, quote, that this noble building, solid as the hills, which completes today its century of youthful existence, will continue to serve its sacred purposes far into an unguessed future. We are that unguessed future. Thanks.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me for our opening hymn, number 26, Holy, Holy, Holy.
Early
like to invite our young people, our youngest among us, or anyone young at heart, to come on forward. Have a seat. It's carpeted. It's more comfortable than it might appear, or so I'm told. Come on down. All right. Look, we have a crowd up here. Awesome. All right. Great. So today we're talking about the 200th anniversary of this building. But of course, it's not really about the building. It's about the people in the building and the values that they lived, that we lived, and our interconnection with each other and us with them. Because they lived a long time ago, they have things to teach us that might be useful for us today. Now, back when the building was built, like now, congregations were multi-generational. Adults, elders, young adults, teens, children, toddlers, babies, all ages together. One thing that strikes me about the history of this church is how often it's our youngest who have led the way, particularly when it comes to being interconnected. For example, we are Unitarian Universalists. We have not always been. Unitarians and Universalists used to be two completely separate denominations, two separate churches. It wasn't until 1961 that the adults in the denomination decided to merge and become Unitarian Universalists. But in Portsmouth, as early as 1871, nearly almost 100 years earlier, the youth group of the Universalist Church and the youth group of the Unitarian Church came together. And I am wondering what we can learn from them. Bless Janet Pulaski for doing a lot of research and reading a lot of documents, so that one thing we know is that that group in 1871 had 3 rooms. They had a room for classes, they had a room for games, and they had a room for books. Quick question. If you were to think to yourself, what is the most important of those 3? Classes, games, books. What would you pick and why? What's the most important? Oh, I don't have a mic, but that's all right. I'll just repeat. Anyone? Classes, games, books. What's most important? What do you think was most important to them? Or what? Games? Okay, games. Why?
Oh, wait, Susan, tell us why.
What? Interaction?
Social interaction.
Social interaction.
Being with one another.
Great. Anyone else? Max? Oh, that happens to me too. I had a thought, it's gone. Oh. All right. Anyone else? Classes, games, books. Books. Kirsten loves books.
Because I love books.
Because Kirsten loves books. All right, so I confess it was a trick question. I think all of them are important. Games, social interaction, they're fun, they help you make friends. Classes help you learn and grow. Books help you learn and grow. And frankly, this particular group had collected, by the time they were done, 1,000 books, which became the beginning of the Portsmouth Library, which I think is pretty cool. But it happened again. So also in 1945, the youth of the Unitarian Church and the youth of the Universalist Church came together. Now we have a little bit more information about them. The notes say they began with an opening and then they did business. Raise your hand if doing business sounds kind of boring. All right, yeah, you're with me on that. But now, guess what their business was? Okay, here's a hint. I'm going to show you some pictures. Here's one. Well, what is that? What is that a picture of? Anybody? Radio. Yeah, so they would have classes about how to make your own radio, kind of like making your own smartphone, but a little simpler. Okay, here's another picture to give you a hint of what they did. Yes, they had ice skating parties. Is that what you were going to say, Max? What's that? Very important business. Okay, here's another hint. Music. Yeah, so they had dance parties, they went caroling, they had sleigh rides. So these people, they had a lot of fun. Okay, here's another one. What's this? Ooh. Anyone can guess what this is? UFO, that's right. They had a UAP or a UFO. We won't argue about that right now. But yes, they had discussions about UFOs, and they even invited Barney Hill to come and speak to them. And if you don't know who Barney Hill is, talk to an experienced South Churcher, and there's a great story there. Okay, Jen Leiden is an experienced South Churcher. And finally, this obviously is a question mark. They would talk about important big topics like, do you believe in God? Or what's the point of praying anyway? A topic that might be appealing to all of us today or not. So it turns out their business wasn't so boring after all, at least not to me. It was learning, it was wondering, it was laughing, it was being together. So here's what I think we can learn from those young people who came before. Friends matter, games matter, fun matters, being together matters, and our world needs all of those things more than ever right now. And the youngest among us are particularly good at being present in the moment, being playful, making friends. So they model something that can teach the rest of us something. And then the rest of us can model how to keep doing it in our 30s and 50s and 70s and 90s, how to keep building bridges with other people our whole life long. So, happy 200th birthday, building. Happy 200th birthday, people building bridges together. May we learn from our past as we continue building our future. Thanks for listening. And now it's time to sing our youngest who are going to RE to RE.
So as we come to the moment of the offertory, this month we have selected the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire to be one of our recipients of our shared plate. And the mission of the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire is to bring the area's African American history to light, fostering understanding and appreciation that inspires stronger, more inclusive communities. This provides a variety of learning experiences for adults and children, including walking tours, tea talks, and a poetry series, and more. Now, the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire has been so much more for our South Church community over the past 30 years. They've been role models and partners with us as our whole community has come together under their leadership to create a more honest historical record about the seacoast. So as we celebrate 200 years as a congregation, committed to naming truth and living in our values, partners like BHTNH are invaluable, and we are deeply grateful for the work in this world. So we ask As always, please give as generously as you are able, either directly to the ushers or through a QR code in our order of service if you prefer to make your payments electronically. The morning offering will now be graciously received. Thank you.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
So I invite us now to come into a time of meditation or prayer. To settle your bodies into the pew and plant your feet on the floor. To take a deep breath and feel yourself held in this holy space. My words this morning are a prayer I've written, but they include a section, words from author and global justice movement leader Arundhati Roy. You may recognize that part. Spirit of life, great mystery, God of many names and no name at all. Miraculous energy that flows and connects every one of us to each other in a mighty love that may hold the answers we seek if we can choose to listen. Help us to seek truth in the light of this open day. To love, to be loved, to never forget our own insignificance, to never get used to the unspeakable violence and the vulgar disparity of life around us, to seek joy in the saddest places, to pursue beauty to its lair, to never simplify what is complicated or complicate what is simple, to respect strength, never power, and above all, to watch, to try and understand, to never look away, and never, never to forget. O Spirit of infinite hearts and minds, guide us to continue the legacy of this community now centuries old, to be a people who refuse to be frozen in time, but instead allow ourselves to be changed by every new understanding and to adjust course, turning our thoughts to the future again and again. Let us gather to be held and supported and inspired by one another so that we can be among the change makers who have never stopped imagining a new world, a world of joy and balance, interdependence rooted in justice, a world that holds the smallest among us high on its shoulders and celebrates who they might become as they inherit the gardens we each have shared in tending. Spirit of wonder, let us choose laughter and friendship and relentless grace. Let us face the challenges before us, big and small, personal and global. Let us carry them all together. Let us not forget. We each belong to this legacy that is still unfolding, and we are both parent and child in this story, both infant and elder, both student and teacher. We are beloved, and we are one. Amen. These doors on this day have been opening to receive our congregation for 200 years. And in those 2 centuries, we have changed a lot. And in those 2 centuries, we have also carried forward joys along with sorrows, wisdom along with misguided thoughts. As Janet shared in her opening words, Reverend Nathan Parker's first sermon in this sanctuary began with a question. For what purpose has this house been erected, and what hopes may we rationally associate with this consecrated place? On that first Sunday, I am sure the people of this stone church could not have imagined much of what has unfolded in the centuries since. But that did not stop Parker from asking the question or from directing their thoughts to the future. And so they did turn their thoughts that way. In the years that followed, the ancestors of this congregation merged with other congregations, linked arms with many groups of people across the seacoast for many purposes, and became a part of an association that spans the continent. But on the first day, things were pretty different. We did not identify as Unitarian or Universalist back then, for one thing. In fact, both those denominations were just taking shape in this newborn country, holding visions not yet realized. And while Unitarian ideas were becoming popularized, the term Unitarian itself was also being thrown around as an insult by the more orthodox Christians of the time, describing heretics, proposing a liberal faith antithetical to the Calvinist thinking that dominated the prior century. Universalists were even more radical heathens in the eyes of many, with their theories of universal salvation challenging the very idea of the punishment in the afterlife. One of the largest severances between the community of North Church and South Church was playing out in this century, North Church holding on to those Calvinist ideas, South Church embracing this new Unitarian way of thinking, although we do not call ourselves that yet. The people of this community were living during a time of religious awakening across this newly forming country. They were grappling with a new constitution, shaping their relationships between state and nation, and new ideas were everywhere. To quote an article from the UUA, the turn to liberalism in New England churches had begun with the Unitarian notion of the singular or unitary nature of God. I've talked with you about this before, right? Unitarian is simply, no, there is one God, not a trinity. But this was a controversial thing from the very beginning when they decided to go with the Trinity plan. There have always been people arguing this Unitarian perspective, and it came over from Europe, and it became a lively question, a question that then led to other questions, as questions often do. So first the question of, well, is there one God or three gods? That soon widens to, well, is God a benevolent and loving God that wants the best for all of humanity, or, as in the Calvinist orthodoxy, a wrathful and exacting God? That debate then called into question other Orthodox ideas of the notion of the elect, the notion that some are saved and some are forsaken. Is that even true? And also, what about the nature of Jesus? If Jesus isn't a God, is he just a man? Is he some sort of hybrid of the two? All of these ideas are flying around this country at the time and flying around this community. And finally, this very critical one about us, about our nature. We debated the question of whether humans are good and capable capable of distinguishing right and wrong, as the liberal religious beliefs were pointing us toward, or, as in the Orthodox view, are we depraved? Are we captive to sin? I have to admit, I still sort of teeter on this sometimes. Maybe you do too, right? Like, I believe in the inherent goodness of us, the capacity of us to achieve great things, but I struggle with the evil that we seem to be able to embody so readily, that exists still to this day in such visible, alive, and active ways. How is it that we are still doing both of those things? What is our very nature? These are questions they were asking 200 years ago, and we still ask them today. What is it about us? The thing about asking questions instead of offering answers is that that is a way of inviting change. As I said, questions beget more questions. And this fact that this was the seed at the beginning of the formation of this community coming into this building, that questions were what we started with, I think has a lot to do with why we have become who we have become. The Orthodox insisted that the Bible alone was the valid basis for religious knowledge, while liberal thinking maintained that God-given reason and conscience was needed along with revelation. Remember, as Janet said, Parker offered us to invite science into the room, to invite our understandings and our questions and our answers into the room. Whilst when the doors to this church first opened, we were still technically a Congregationalist congregation, the threads of Calvinism were still here a little bit, but the winds of change were in the air. And in that first sermon, Parker references God as being of spotless purity and infinite love. That does not sound wrathful to me. And he spoke of the importance of truth and reason in forming one's character. This is a quote from his sermon, and I love it. He says, "All the means of discovering moral truth are recognized by Christianity, and she appropriates all truth to her service." First of all, he calls her she. But he also says, she says, bring it. He says, Christianity can handle it. Whatever may be the range of human thought and whatever treasures the mind may become with which the mind may become enriched, the religion of Jesus rejoices in the most wakeful mental activity. And in every truth which is added to the ever-growing mass of human knowledge, she shrouds herself not in a mysterious darkness, fears not the light, but delights to walk forth in the open day, and expects to gather new honors as her character is more clearly understood. This is a man who understands that his faith is strong and it can handle rigorous debate and it will welcome new understandings and it will modify itself and accompany that new understanding into a new day. And he invites everyone in the room to come with him And they do. From that very first day, the people sat in the pews inside of this church and they reflected on the growth and possibility that comes with a recognition that revelation is actually not sealed. That faith is strengthened and deepened by staying in close relationship with truth. That we are meant to be in dialogue with the light of the open day is an invitation to be us, to listen and ask questions and evolve and to change. And I want to be a part of that. That we should bring these new insights and understandings to the altar of our faith and test them against one another. That whatever we learn in this journey of life will strengthen, not weaken, our faithful practice. Meanwhile, big questions were being raised and discussed in our larger society. And liberal voices were deeply influential at that time. Universalists like Hosea Ballou, Unitarians like William Ellery Channing had a significant influence on, for one, the Transcendental movement. Thought leaders like Margaret Fuller, who deeply influenced the women's suffrage movement, and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who offered our opening chalice lighting words. She was a frequent speaker on the Unitarian circuit, a free Black woman and a powerful activist for women's and Black rights. Churches across New England were more than just places of worship. They invited lectures and thought leaders that inspired innovation. They played a role in the abolition of slavery in 1865 and the Civil Rights Amendment ratified in 1968 and the 15th Amendment giving African American men the right to vote in 1870. South Church specifically was known for abolitionist activism and support for Black residents in the 1800s. Unitarian women in this church aided fugitive slaves via the Underground Railroad and later funded schools for freedom. There are noble stories in our history, and the relationship between the moral questions of the day and the evolution of our faith are undeniable. It all must have seemed so promising, an awakening that might just enshrine a new kind of nation, to make true the aspiration of being a country with liberty and justice for all, actually for all. We were a faith being born alongside that budding new democracy, and we were so intertwined you can't pull us apart from one another. But the truth was, it is more complicated than just that. Because there is always more than one story being told, more than one thing happening, because simultaneous with the kind of progress I'm sharing with you, with the new ways of thinking, there were other forces at work. As we spoke here of expanding liberties for more and more of our citizens, our country also continued to commit the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Indigenous people as we pushed our way westward. Some of the deadliest mass violence against Indigenous people, in fact, occurred during the late 1800s, with very little outcry from liberal faith leaders, by the way. Humankind continued to plant the seeds that would lead us toward empire and toward the war machine that we would build and that would wreak havoc on the globe. And the abolition movement itself of the 19th century did not prevent loopholes in that 13th Amendment, which would then allow for a quick pivot to Jim Crow legal practices and the racial violence and terrorism that would come next, along with the birth of mass incarceration. The radically transformative ideas of the 19th century happened within a culture that was also steeped in racism and classism and sexism. They were progressive, but they could only go so far in that context. And yet, seeds are funny things. When a community is invited to walk forth in the light of the open day, when we learn all of what that means in terms of discovering moral truth and having that moral truth appropriated to the service of our faith, that is fertile ground for religious formation. That is a way of shaping a people that's hard to intercept. to discover that one's faith grows stronger when we are honest and open about what is true, even the hard parts about what is true, when we welcome questions, when we are willing to change when we are willing to change with the answers, then we also begin to realize that such a practice requires us to consider who are we called to be in all of this. It compels us toward action. It compels us toward having a voice in the wider community. It compels us toward pushing for our representatives and our forming governments and our states and our nations to do better, to change. By 1926, when the Centennial Address was offered in this sanctuary, South Church had become a Unitarian congregation. Both of those ministers, as Janet mentioned, Reverend Alfred Gooding and the minister of North Church, Reverend Lucius Harrison Thayer, each offered a message that day together. Their address was seen as symbolic of a return to the unity and fellowship and friendship of those two ancient parishes. They were conscious of their common heritage. North Church and South Church had been one in those early 1600s before splitting apart. And this was a coming back together, a message to the communities, look, at the power of healing relationships, of meeting each other across differences, of collaborating, of recognizing our interconnectedness. It was more foreshadowing, if you ask me, just as that first sermon in this building was, that centennial sermon, who knows, but it may very well have helped to lay the groundwork for when 20 years later, the Universalist congregation burnt to the ground, and the people of that church came here to the Unitarian church and joined us. And in true South Church nature, we were kind of ahead of the game. We were here practicing what would it look like to be a pluralist faith for 20 years before the actual merger of Unitarian and Universalism happened in Boston, forming the denomination Unitarian Universalist that we are right now. So South Church was on this leading edge, holding space for a people with two different, though similar, points of view, shaping what does it look like to be a community that have different theological perspectives. And thus we began this journey of moving away from having shared theology toward having a shared commitment to our relationships with one another, to the values that we hold most precious. It's often been the case, I already said that. The seeds of being question askers were well established by then, but it should not surprise any of us that the merger of the two faith communities with different theological points of view, similar as they would need to navigate the differences in the practice of covenant, became a very valuable tool. We have nurtured this practice as a faith for over a century now. From the declaration of our principles in 1961, our UU faith tradition moved away from the necessity of a shared creed and moved toward this practice of dialogue and right relationship, of articulating our shared values and then determining how we would, as a community, act on them together. We kept seeking the truth in the light of the open day and changing with the answers we discovered. Building a world community was a goal. Declaring the worth and dignity of all people was a central tenet. Working toward justice and equity became a part of our faith, undeniable, centering love. Unitarian Universalism was born with a recognition that to practice our radical faith would require us to engage in the work of social justice. There are remarkable stories of allyship and sacrifice on the part of UUs during the civil rights movement, and there are also missed opportunities and missteps. You can read about the Black empowerment tragedy in our faith in the late 60s and early 70s as an example, and I tell you, we still feel the consequences of those missteps back then. We lost a lot of really critical Black faith leaders by the choices that our denomination made in that turn between the 60s and the 70s. In the 1980s, women in our UU congregation led the charge to amend our original principles, largely because they wanted to change the male-centered framing of our language. And they also wanted to widen our circle of care beyond our fellow humankind to encompass the web of all life, to recognize that we are a part of this planet Earth and the natural world. Our pluralism had broadened over those past 2 decades, and we enshrined changes to our new principles and purposes as well, making explicit our appreciation for world religions and insights of science and reason, the earth-based traditions, along with the valuable lessons from our Judeo-Christian heritage. Wider and wider our circle grew. In the 80s and 90s, we welcomed LGBTQ people into our sanctuaries at a time when other churches were turning their backs on them, and these siblings in faith brought tremendous insights along with many invitations for all of us to grow and continue to change, to show up in right relationship with one another. Changes to our principles and purposes in the 90s were minimal, but we removed binary pronouns and became one people. And then in the 90s, over a number of years, our National Assembly began to talk and think about how to commit ourselves to being anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural. We recognized we still had a lot of work to do as a faith, still a faith dominated by white people, still a faith missing a critical analysis of our own embedded biases, the blind spots that were causing ongoing harm for people in our community. Those commitments to anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism in the 90s bore the way for what was called the Eighth Principle Project in the 2000s, inviting congregations to add language to our principles and purposes that acknowledges we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm, promote, and journey towards spiritual wholeness by working to build diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This change is still new for us. We are still finding our way through it. Just a couple years ago, you all probably remember, if you were here, that we adopted a whole new language for describing what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. That helpful little mnemonic, the jet pig, that's downstairs on our bulletin board, with a big heart in its center to represent that love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. And jet pig, as Lance illustrated it, stands for the values of justice and equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. These are the core values we as a community are working on right now. They might change. They will certainly change us as we explore and ask questions and push each other to be better versions of ourselves individually and as a whole community. For what purpose has this house been erected? And what hopes may we rationally associate with this consecrated place, Parker asked. 2 centuries later, we are asking ourselves these same questions. Last May, in our congregational newsletter, an invitation to our visioning weekend went out. It said, "We've been through a lot together in recent years. Where should we go next? What are our hopes, dreams, and aspirations for South Church?" And over the course of many months to follow, we came together and talked about just that. And by November of this past year, we had voted a new vision statement. A vision imagining South Church to be widely known as a vibrant spiritual home where people of all ages and abilities, beliefs and identities seek meaning and purpose, inspiration and comfort. A vision rooted in love, where we carry forward a legacy of care for one another, our Seacoast community, and the earth we share. And a vision united in our ever-deepening practice of Unitarian Universalist values, that we act with courage and serve with joy for a more just, compassionate, and thriving world. Today, and in this century ahead of us, we have a vision, and I see promise and potential in that vision we share. As we continue to seek truth in the light of the open day and direct our thoughts to the future, I am grateful for the wisdom of the many who have carried us, clumsily sometimes, reluctantly at other times, but forward to this moment. I am grateful to be practicing this faith with you. May the road ahead of us offer joyful surprises and continued clarity as we practice living our values in this blessed, broken world. Amen.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me for our closing hymn, number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. We are going to sing verses 1, 2, and 3.
All creatures of the earth and sky, come, kindred, lift your voices high. Alleluia, alleluia. Bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Swift rushing wind, so wild and strong, white clouds that sail in heaven along. Alleluia, alleluia. Fair rising morn, in praise rejoice. High stars of evening find a voice. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Cool flowing water, pure and clear, make music for all life to hear. Alleluia, alleluia. Dance, flame of fire so strong and bright, and bless us with your warmth and light. Alleluia, 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 alleluia.
So we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Thank you.
Some members of our Board of Trustees kindly shared answers with me in advance of today's worship to the question of, what do you want to tell South Church of the future about who we are right now?
Our board chair, Mark Eves, wants to ask if they can guess how much repairing a window costs. He also lifted up the gift of being a thriving, multi-generational community right now.
Our treasurer, Lori Bilby, wants to let them know we are thinking of them.
Anna Howard shares that we are an important part of the resistance movement on the seacoast.
Theo Wigand wants to tell them that despite a hollowing out of churches across all denominations, we are here, active, growing, and multi-generational, and though we are excited and proud about that, we are not complacent or taking it for granted.
Andrew McGeorge shares that our new co-leadership and shared ministry is working out, and he hopes the model continues well into the future.
And Alyssa Murphy, she just wants to tell them, we're having fun.
Let us continue to seek the truth in the light of this open day.
And may we direct our thoughts to the future we can only imagine. Happy birthday, South Church.